Earlier today, Todd Howard was on the Kinda Funny Gamescast for a new live interview. During this, he provided some insights into the production of the Fallout TV show, including a reveal on one major location that'll pop up in Fallout Season 2, but we also get into Todd Howard's thoughts on Fallout, and we get those questions about when a new Fallout game could come, or even if one could come from Obsidian. But it's not just talk about Fallout, we also get some major news on what is going on with Starfield and even its Shattered Space DLC. But in other major news, the Fallout TV show displays just dropped. Displays are high-quality metal posters that you can easily swap and move around. They're displays for all of the major Bethesda franchises and a ton of options for Fallout. Check them out using my affiliate link down below, and you can even get yourself a bit of a discount. But of course, a ton of this interview was focused around the Fallout TV show. Todd Howard describes how working on the Fallout TV show was one of the most fun aspects of his career so far, and how he and Jonathan Nolan really hit it off, and seems like this is what led to the show in the first place.
And it didn't come out of this desire to, we must have a TV show. It's like you hit it off with another creator, someone I respect immensely. You know, Jonah's work has inspired me so much, from what he did in The Dark Knight and Interstellar, Prestige, Memento, and then Westworld, where you felt like, okay, we could do this at a high level. You know, we could have a really high quality kind of show. And I wanted to approach it as an entry in the franchise, as opposed to, you know, a direct translation of an existing story. So, and he and I just kind of clicked. He was obviously had played the games a lot, so he didn't come to it like, you know, I just want to make a TV show. He came to it as a fan of Fallout. He had played so much Fallout 3. He could speak to it naturally.
But I think this is what really gets into the why the Fallout TV show worked. It seems like Todd Howard acts as almost this arbiter of Fallout. We all wish they were doing more spin-offs and remasters, but we haven't gotten that yet because he didn't really want it. Conversely, in the case of the Fallout TV show, it took someone who really understood and was independently passionate about Fallout to actually get it made, and that seems to be one of the big reasons as to why this show has been such a massive success. It was Jonathan Nolan going, hey, I have some really cool ideas for a Fallout show, instead of, hey, let's do a Fallout show, and then trying to figure out how to make it really cool. And a lot of people thought this show was cool. Earlier today, we got the reveal that the Fallout TV show was watched by more than 65 million people through the 16 days since release. This makes it the second most watched Prime show ever, just behind Rings of Power. But what to me is the even more impressive stat is that among adults 18 to 34, 60% of that viewership came from outside of the United States. So a lot of the young adults watching the show weren't Americans, reflecting on just how global Fallout really is right now. Also makes sense why we constantly are getting comments about a Fallout not set in the United States. And in Todd Howard's view, the Fallout TV show provides a unique lens. The Fallout games are one lens into Fallout, but the show is another. They both have a ton of overlap, but appeal to slightly different audiences. But there was also a key aspect of the Fallout TV show to make it feel like a standalone entry into the franchise. We saw all those articles about how the showrunners really approached it as a Fallout 5, a new story, not just an adaptation. And here, Todd Howard expands on that to describe him really encouraging evolution from the show.
Well, I would say the main thing I would point out to Jonah and them is we change things every game also, right?
You don't
Like,
respect your own lore.
time
I knew it.
on.
I knew you don't respect your own lore.
Well, we try to as much as possible. But like the power armor changes from game to game. How
Sure.
it worked from 3 to 4 even, it's very different. And so it was, hey, look, there may be some things that you need to evolve, because that's what we do in the games. And let's just make that a conversation. Let's have it be intentional. One of the ones we talked about is the Pip-Boy changes, and it changes every game. But the one in the show, it's kind of like this gunmetal color. And Jonah was sort of consistent. Hey, look, I have a lot of colors in camera, very particular with how these scenes are going to look. The vault suit is very, like, that should be where the color is coming from.
Although, with that in mind, we get the question of how much time did Todd Howard actually contribute to the Fallout TV show?
You know, my main involvement was up front, you know, and finding that box. You know, what are we going to do? What are we not going to do? What are the rules? When we want to break the rules, how do we go through that? So I would do script reviews. But look, it's not just me. It's Istvan Pele, who's been the art director on the series. Emil Pagliarulo has been the design director on the series. James Altman was the executive producer along with me. So I got to go to set, you know, a number of times and check things out. But I'm not going to set to be like, yeah, I don't like the lighting. I mean, you leave that up to the professionals. But James was there, you know, most of the time when they were shooting. And that was, we would have sometimes daily callbacks to, hey, there's this question on this, and we would have a call back to the studio, give them an answer, or they're going to be shooting something in a couple days and they're building this prop. This is what it looks like. can we verify this? Do we need any changes? So it was pretty active.
This is pretty interesting to me, because it definitely sounds like Bethesda and ZeniMax were intimately involved with TV show production. And mind you, we don't have exact dates, but it really seems like a lot of this was going on right as Starfield was entering into its final phase of production. Seems like this was an incredibly busy time for Todd Howard. Since the release of the show, they've been sharing periodic behind-the-scenes photos on Twitter, and there are quite a few involving various members of Bethesda. This is likely one of the big reasons the show was so visually accurate to the games, and particularly visually accurate to Fallout 4. And part of this process were actual checks from Bethesda on the Fallout TV show to ensure it's taking Fallout in the direction they want it to go.
Right. And so there's still a check back to make sure, hey, this fits in the franchise. This moves it forward in ways that we think are appropriate. So
Todd Howard continues on to describe that during production they started to realize they were making something special, and he would even ask crew members who were Fallout fans if the show was coming out as good as it seemed to be. And even specifically, Todd Howard describes the first script he read on the Fallout TV show as a real gift. Even from the onset, Bethesda was incredibly happy with where the show was headed, and honestly, I get why. Despite the Fallout fanbase being downright crazy, basically everyone agrees that the show looks great. It feels like Fallout, and it feels like it really understands what Fallout is. To me, that seems like the hardest detail to get correct, but they nailed it. This is a show being made by people who actually took the time to understand Fallout. And if you were impressed by the attention to detail from the show, apparently it went even further than most of us realized.
My favorite anecdote is they had the overseer's office.
Yeah.
And I sit down, like, hey, sit behind the desk. We'll like do a little interview here. And you sit down, they have all the papers, and they have this note that no one will ever see that's like to the overseer that they had written. I'm reading, I'm like, oh. Then you have the stack of papers and you flip it over, and then they have like the power report in the vault, and then like the food supply. I'm like, you didn't even like fake the stack of papers.
To me, this is just insane. It really speaks to the love the set and prop designers had for Fallout just to take it to that level. But during this interview, we also get the retirement question. Is retirement on Todd Howard's mind? To which he responds,
I don't want to ever stop. I just, it's too much fun. I
Sure.
love the work. I love the products. If I didn't make these games, I would just be playing them all the time. Even this weekend, I was jumping between Starfield and Fallout 76 and Fallout 4. Like, that's how I spent my weekend playing games.
Very nice.
And, they do take a long time. And
Yeah.
so I think one of the things that we're focused on here is obviously making sure they're the highest quality, but also, finding ways to increase our output, because we don't want to wait that long either, right? It's never our plan, but we want to make sure that we get it right. And so my hope is to do it kind of as long as possible. I have no plans of retiring or anything like that.
honestly, I was curious about this one myself. Todd Howard spent a ton of his career managing 100 developer team in Maryland. But over the last decade, we've seen this gigantic growth from Bethesda, opening up several new studios, getting into live service and mobile, and eventually getting bought out by Microsoft. It definitely seems like Todd Howard's job would have dramatically evolved, but between his response here and even what he mentioned earlier about loving being on set for the Fallout TV show, which of course is only something that will continue to happen as we get further seasons of this show, makes me think that we are really going to be seeing Todd Howard for a long time, until Todd Howard's an old man video game developer, and hey, I'm definitely here for that. And in this, the interviewer begins to touch on Bethesda getting their games out a bit faster. And we get the question so many are wondering right now, whether Bethesda regrets not having a new Fallout game out to complement the release of this TV show.
No, not necessarily. We sort of, first I view it top-down franchise. How healthy is the franchise? How relevant is Fallout to the world? And I think we're doing really well there. And we have a whole team on Fallout 76, and so we've always been doing a lot of Fallout work. We're always making plans, and we kind of have, in some ways or another, 5 kind of separate teams within the studio. We move people between both the work we do on Fallout, the work we're doing on Starfield. We have some stuff coming that we really excited for people to see. Elder Scrolls 6 mobile team, and then kind of external projects and co-development we're doing on things. Obviously, we do, backports or other things. We're going to other platforms with games that still have big audiences, such as Fallout 4.
Sure.
This response is very interesting, and it does give us a very powerful insight into what Bethesda is actually doing. So we see they have 5 teams, and from an earlier interview with Wired, we know a rough employee distribution. The Starfield team was about half of the 500 developers at Bethesda right now, so 250 developers on Starfield as of the end of last year. The vast majority of remaining developers likely make up the Fallout and Elder Scrolls 6 teams. Each of these are pretty obvious. We heard how production on the Elder Scrolls 6 has begun. Many rumors right now suggest a 2026 release date for that game. And of course, we know that Fallout team is working on both Fallout 76 and likely somewhat on the Fallout 4 Next Gen update, and perhaps some of the updates that will need to come out after the Fallout 4 Next Gen update. Right now, Fallout 76 is getting external support from several studios, but the main support studio seems to be Double 11. This is actually made up of several former Fallout 4 mod authors who were hired to work on Fallout 76 at Double 11. The mobile team just dropped the Elder Scrolls Castles, but then we also have some internal teams that primarily help external teams and co-development, which is an incredibly interesting answer to me. So now, to be clear, I recognize this is absolutely confirmation bias, but a co-development team would perfectly line up with that rumor that Virtuous Games, a massive dev outsourcing company, was working on an Oblivion remaster built in both Gamebryo and Unreal Engine 5, slated for release in late 2024 or early 2025. So I've covered this leak to death at this point, but what made this one so interesting to me is just how plausible it was from the onset. Remastered games using dual engines is a thing now. Several other games have done this to great success because it allows you to keep that original engine in the background to make sure the game feels the same. But then you could use the newer engine like Unreal Engine 5 to make things look substantially better, which is basically what everyone wants from a remaster, a great looking game that feels exactly like it did before. And on this original leak post, it wasn't just leaking Oblivion. There were several other games from Virtuous mentioned, and even the moderators of the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit verified this user as somebody who could know this information. I reached out to the moderators separately, and they confirmed to me that, yeah, this definitely looks like it could be a real one. Which, okay, even just when that Oblivion leak came out, I was like, okay, this is looking pretty promising. But then several months after that post was made and subsequently deleted, we got a leak of a Bethesda roadmap from the FTC and really from Microsoft that had an Oblivion remaster on it and had almost exactly the same timeline that was mentioned in this Reddit post, which hypothetically would be what the co-development team at Bethesda is working on right now. They're helping the external studio with Virtuous Games remaster Oblivion. Obviously, we don't actually know if this is true, but we definitely don't have it disconfirmed here. This interviewer asked some follow-ups about co-developing Fallout games with some other studios, and Todd Howard continues on to say they're always approached with offers around other people developing Fallout, but how Bethesda feels happy with their runway of upcoming Fallout releases, specifically mentioning the Fallout 76 updates and Fallout 4 Next Gen, and how they want to make sure they're producing quality content. I don't know how the interviewer didn't immediately challenge the assertion when it comes to the Fallout 4 Next Gen update. I would not describe the Fallout 4 Next Gen update as quality content. I think a lot of people who tried it would agree with me, but at least in Todd Howard's opinion, it seems like he feels Fallout is perfectly okay right now. And honestly, I think all of this lines up with the new rumor coming from Jez Corden that following the Fallout TV show's success, Microsoft wants to get a new Fallout game out as quickly as possible, and that may mean using other developers not named Bethesda to make that happen. You might be thinking, well, how does that line up? And I really think it's the fact that Microsoft is feeling that way now. It means a new Fallout game isn't already in development by an external studio. Discussions are just beginning, which perfectly lines up with what Todd Howard is saying here. He feels like Fallout is doing good, and the insane success of the Fallout TV show is what made Microsoft realize they need to step things up and get something out faster. And we hear Todd Howard describe how the level of attention coming to the Fallout games from the show blew away even their wildest expectations, and I think even projections.
You expect the show to bring a lot of attention to it, but the way that it has and the level of it has exceeded, even our wildest expectations. The games were ready for it, right? We had content added to all the games, so they're kind of ready for people to come back. But the level of it has certainly completely blown us away here.
Although one aspect of all of this that Todd Howard highlights that I do think a lot of people are missing is Fallout 76 was just way more popular than a lot of people realized.
I think what's great about this moment is seeing all of that work in Fallout 76. Understand a lot of people, dismissed it from how it launched, understandably. Sure. It's kind of been sneaky popular for the last, 3 or 4 years. And seeing all of that attention come onto 76 now, and people coming in and saying, oh, really, really enjoying this as a Fallout experience, I think right now, as of today, it's the most people we've ever had in that game.
It may not have had crazy Steam numbers before the past couple of weeks, but Fallout 76 has always been in the top 50 games on Xbox. 6 years of presence on this list is a pretty big deal. Most games here are cyclic. You'll notice a lot of other popular releases are not on this list anymore. But Fallout 76 has had a remarkable degree of staying power with that core audience, and you have to imagine a lot of those players are buying microtransactions as well. But then this talk transitions over to Starfield stuff and get a very important question. How has the polarizing launch of Starfield impacted Bethesda?
Number one that we're always concerned with is how is the game holding up, right? What's our bug level? What's the crash rate? So first of all, we were over the moon with how kind of the actual data we were getting back and how the game was performing on a technical level. That one to us is always sort of most important on the dev side. Number two was the amount of players. We kind of set a record for how many players that we had in a game. Obviously, Game Pass is a part of that.
Of course.
You know, but to see the amount of people playing and like, okay, we've had more players at launch than we've ever had in our careers, and the game is holding up really well. It's a really joyous moment for us, particularly after how long the game took. On the review side, and we've been through this, so it's not sort of new to us. What's new is it's a new IP, so you know that we're going to be doing some things differently than we've done before. And obviously we had people who love the game, both on the review side, and people who liked it less. The majority of our reviews were in the 90s.
I think the response we get from Todd Howard here is very telling. My personal diagnosis on Starfield is that it's a very fun game that has a design that just gets tedious once you cross 50 to 100 hours. The dotting around and load screens just begin to weigh on you. Todd Howard recognizes this complaint as he touches on fan reception to exploration.
Obviously, look, we see the feedback. We see a lot of players saying, this is what I want out of a Bethesda game. Which is to explore a world in a certain way. And Starfield didn't give me that. I prefer the way it's done in Fallout or Elder Scrolls, and perfectly understandable. You know, for us, particularly me going into a science fiction game, I want to be able to land on all the planets. I want the game to say yes to us, knowing that that content is going to be different than you've seen from us in the past when you're exploring a landscape. And that's some of the trade-offs we'll make to do what we think makes, you know, a science fiction game like this that's kind of based in this kind of fiction and reality to make it what it should be.
But his response there makes me think he doesn't actually agree with that complaint personally, which is totally fair and I think very informative. When talking about the upcoming Starfield improvements, Todd Howard mentions a few things.
Obviously, look, there are areas that, you know, the maps or some other things, gameplay options that we're adding, other display modes on console that people have asked for. And we want to do all that stuff. Take some time, but we're excited to get stuff out there.
New display options on consoles, like being able to play at a concrete 60 FPS, would definitely be huge. But the reason I'm highlighting all of this in the way I am is I think a lot of fans are setting themselves up for disappointment with Starfield. I've been seeing a ton of expectations of something like a Cyberpunk 2077 2.0 level overhaul coming to Starfield this year. And frankly, I have no idea why people are even saying that. Just like Todd Howard saying here, all we've ever heard from Bethesda when it comes to Starfield is how much of a financial and critical success this game is. It's the biggest launch ever, and while they're editing some things, a full-fledged overhaul has never even been remotely described, and I think if you're beginning to expect something like that, you're going to be very disappointed. This is the 2024 roadmap for Starfield. If you're expecting anything beyond what's written on this list right now, I think you're going to be disappointed, and I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment. But when it does come to some of the updates on Starfield, they do sound pretty exciting. Todd Howard mentions how a new update should be going up on Steam Beta later this week, likely on Wednesday. And this will feature improvements to shipbuilding, map changes, and more, with Todd Howard describing it as a big update for the game. And we get the confirmation that Shattered Space is coming to Starfield this fall.
This is a separate update.
Okay.
Shattered Space is in the fall, but we have a big update that's coming really soon for Starfield.
That is honestly a pretty major reveal because that's fairly far away. A full year after release, and we heard how Starfield had this incredibly long QA process, so a lot of people assumed the DLC may have even started production in 2022 or early 2023, which would put the development time at closer to 2 years than just one. This certainly makes me think that Starfield's going to be getting one big expansion as opposed to several like we had with Fallout 4, and I've actually thought this for a while, that the strategy they'll be using teasing with Starfield is one major expansion, then have the bulk of your team move over to the Elder Scrolls 6 because you know you're going to make a ton of money with that game, and all the while in the background, paid mods will be gradually coming out for Starfield, making Bethesda tons of money for the next few decades. And even here, we hear that Shattered Space is coming along nicely.
Shattered Space is coming along nicely?
It is. We're going to have some stuff to show. I can't say.
What do you think of summertime,
No.
maybe? Right around SGF? What are you doing? June, something there? Got a showcase going on with Xbox? What's happening? Monday? Sunday? Monday?
Yes.
Tuesday? Okay.
Okay.
Fine. Have it your way.
Okay.
This seems to be about confirmation that we're going to be getting a summer showcase reveal of Shattered Space in June. And hey, get subscribed. I will be in downtown LA this June, going to some events and hopefully bring you a ton of coverage on everything. And Todd Howard also confirms the new creation kit has already gone out to some Starfield modders or creators, as he refers to them here. And this is likely those in the paid mod system for Skyrim that's also coming to Starfield. This is known as creations, and the creators are part of the verified creator program. We also hear how there's going to be a visit to Bethesda's HQ next week, and it seems like these creators are going to be the ones there. As well as Todd Howard does confirm that console mods are coming to Starfield, and he even mentions being able to learn from what they did with Fallout 4 and Skyrim. So hopefully that means that a larger amount of mod space on consoles will come with Starfield. We then get a couple of very informative answers from their Q&A. Todd Howard says cross-progression is more important to Bethesda than cross-play for Fallout 76. Both cross-progression and cross-play are seemingly being considered for the game, but it very much so sounds like cross-progression is way more likely to actually come to the game. And even in future games, they want you to be able to play anywhere and continue to be able to progress on the same save game. Todd Howard is asked about potentially working with Obsidian again. He doesn't share any major details, but he mentions how he loves New Vegas and Fergus, as the studio head at Obsidian.
And obviously, Season 2 is going to be featuring some of New Vegas. And we're careful about, maintaining the key events of that game and the great content in it. It is obviously difficult to deal with when you're going back to an area where a game had multiple endings.
Yep.
We have some answers there, but it's hard. It is, I'll just admit, everybody realizes it's hard to sort of canonize or say this is exactly how that game ended. And so whenever we can, I like to avoid it.
And seemingly, he just gives us the big reveal that New Vegas will be a part of Fallout Season 2. So this was obviously expected due to the final shot of the Fallout TV show showing New Vegas, but it's nice to hear it more explicitly. And I am genuinely curious to see where they take this story around all of that. Todd Howard's also asked about a Fallout game going overseas, but he does really feel like Americana plays a major role in the Fallout franchise and he plans to keep it here. Overall, this interview was great. A lot of the big questions were asked about. The only thing I wish we touched on was the Fallout 4 Next Gen update and some of the problems with that, but even beyond what I highlighted in this video, the interview has a ton more to offer. We get to hear about Todd Howard's thoughts on Baldur's Gate 3 and even where he's getting his iconic leather jackets from. I'll link to the full interview down below if you're interested, but otherwise click here to learn more about some of the insane updates we've been getting on Fallout.